was raised on his family's ranch near Rowland, Nevada, in northern Elko County. He has worked all of his life as a buckaroo, and over the years has learned such buckaroo arts as poetry, horsehair braiding, and the making of top-quality rawhide horse gear. He learned the rudiments of braiding from his father, but perfected his skill by taking well-made pieces of braided gear apart and by studying books. He speaks in a low baritone through a thick mustache and clearly describes many of the processes involved in braiding rawhide into usable gear, such as hackamores, bozals, reins, and riatas.
Oh, rawhide is basically what it says it is. It's the hide off of a cow in the raw condition. And that's why it's called rawhide. Leather is cured or worked, and so it's different than the rawhide. Basically, you don't do anything to it. After I skin a cow, I'll take the hide and nail it up on a wall, and you want to keep it inside, out of the sun, because the sun is not good for it. It breaks down the fibers and it weakens the hide. When it's just right, you pull it off of the wall, and then you can lay it over a pull fence and scrape it between your legs and scrape the hair off. Take a 4 or 5 inch knife and scrape it that way. Now, what you're actually doing is cutting the hair right at the surface of the hide. Well, you're leaving the fibers of the hair in the hide. You're just cutting the hair right even with the surface of the hide. Okay, after you get the hair off the hide, then you throw it back in the creek. Soak it up again, get it soft again. And that usually takes like 10 or 12 hours. Sometimes 24 hours. But after it's soft again, then you drag it out of the water and hang it up for 2 or 3 hours and let most of the water drip off so that it's somewhat dry. And then I lay it out on a flat surface, and I use sheep shears. You can use a pocket knife or a draw knife or whatever, but I use sheep shears, and I push them, and you cut the hide in strips. And the way you do that, you just start on the outside, pushing the shears. You don't use them like scissors. You just push them. And just start around the outside of the hide and just start going around and around and around. And you make a strip about 1 inch wide. If there's a hole in the hide that you've put there when you skin the cow, you don't want to leave that in the strip. And when you come to the brand, you want to cut out the brand. And then you just keep going around, and you'll end up with a strip about 400 to 600 feet long. And then you're ready to work the rawhide into finer strings.
The next step is to pull the strings through a splitter, or skiver, it is sometimes called, to make the strings exactly the same thickness throughout their entire length. If he is making small decorative buttons, such as used on reins, the strings are made fairly thin. But if he's making a riata,
then you can take that if you want to build a rope. If you're going to build a riata out of that, then you can just take that whole hide in and pull it through your splitter. And if you're building a rope, you want it pretty thick. If you're going to build button string or reins out of it, you have to cut it thinner. But that's the next process, is skiving the hide down to the right thickness. Next step after that is putting it on a string cutter. And I have one that was made for me. And I use a razor blade, but you can use a pocket knife and a notch in a board. And then depending on what you're going to use that hide for, if you're going to make a riata, then you want those strings about 1/4 of an inch wide. Okay, and then after you do get the width you want, then you do have to bevel it. And that's beveling the 2 top corners.
the bevels, Randy says, make for a much smoother braid. But, he adds, even after all of this work, the rawhide is still not ready to braid.
There's 2 parts to rawhiding. The one part is learning how to braid, tying the buttons, and then the other part is learning how to work your rawhide, having it in the right condition. And that was a learning process right there. You can't just pick a piece of rawhide up and braid it. You have to wet it, dampen it, and then let it mellow and get it in the right texture. If it's too wet, then when you braid it and it dries, it leaves gaps in the rawhide. And if it's too dry and you try to braid it, then it doesn't braid tight.
Most buckaroos use nylon ropes today, but many, such as Randy Stowell, know that it takes much more skill to use a rawhide riata properly. a skill that takes years of practice to perfect.
A riata can't stand jerk, but if you catch a cow and then dally to your horn and then stop her slow, just let the turns run out until you slow her down and then stop her, why then it's real strong. And you do have to let a riata run. And you can lose a finger that way, or a thumb. Yeah, slip into your turns, and if it gets into the turns, why, it'll cut it off. It's a little different feel than a nylon rope, but they're a good rope. They catch a lot of times where a nylon rope won't. They're more alive. They have more action, more feel to them than the nylon. It has more life to it.
The series Home Means Nevada presents folk life from the Silver State and is produced by the Nevada State Council on the Arts, Folk Arts Coordinator Blen Owen, in cooperation with KUNR Reno, KNPR Las Vegas, and KOLO Reno, with funding from the National Endowment for the Arts Folk Arts Program and the State of Nevada. This is Deb Spring.